People might look at my routine and say, oh, that's like so hard and not enjoyable. Having chronic diseases that are avoidable also is hard and not enjoyable. I stop eating typically on a daily basis around 3:30. I go to bed every night at 8:30. The red lights go on. The room is super cool. No distractions in the room. I took my Oura Ring cardiovascular age from about -6.5 years to -11.5 years in about 6 months. I focus a lot on like muscle mass and bone density, like lifting as heavy as I possibly can. Really, I'm not scared of like adding on too much muscle. Without a doubt, is going to make the biggest impact on longevity. Some things work really well, some things don't. When I was in LA, I did a like smack dab in the middle of the LA fires. So I had before and then I had after, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen. And I don't want to like scare anyone or fearmonger, but it was absolutely wild.
Are you really on a pure whole foods diet?
Yeah, zero ultra processed foods. Lots of veggies, organic plants, fiber. I feel like clearer, more like mental clarity, more mental energy. I haven't seen any decline like in my muscle, which is really exciting.
I do want to talk about women's health.
The research says that women may need between 11 and 20 minutes more of sleep, but I found it can be even more than that in different phases. We talked about caloric restriction being one of the most science-backed longevity protocols, right? And so I tried that, and it didn't take too long to see thyroid markers trend in the wrong direction. Women are so much more susceptible to autoimmune conditions. I think about 80% of autoimmune conditions roughly are in women. I mean, I've done all the testing that I think is available, obviously hormone testing, AMH testing, intravaginal ultrasound to do a follicle count. Selfishly, I want to do what works best.
Are those the kinds of things that would be recommended to lots of people?
There can be too much of this longevity practices.
Well, Kayla, thank you so much for hosting me here at your studio for a podcast collaboration. It's a pleasure to be able to now turn the tables on you. You just interrogated me for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, well, no, it wasn't an interrogation. It was a great conversation, but we'll try not to cover too much of the same ground. I'd be really interested to hear, though, you were really, in many ways, an early adopter of what, now has become pretty popular, at least within the longevity community. So maybe talk a little bit about your sort of early experiences and how you got so interested in health optimization and what put you on that path.
Yeah. I always was kind of interested, right? Like I played a lot of sports when I was growing up. I loved being active, but it really started, I became an entrepreneur at like 17, 18 years old, and I didn't grow up healthy at all. I grew up on the standard American diet, like Fruit Loops, all these foods that I would like never consider eating now.
Yeah.
But that's how I grew up. So I had this, I had the understanding that in order to really perform the way that I needed to get to where I wanted to be in life, I was going to have to somehow upgrade my biology. I mean, even though I was young, right? I'm 17, 18 years old, but still, like I feel better now than I did then because I was excited about the fact that maybe I can implement other, dietary changes. And I just started to research. I also, started going to college for it. I actually didn't finish college. I dropped out. I went back a few years ago and I only have like a few credits. I'm like, what was I even doing? But I was just being an entrepreneur. I'm like, I don't need that, and then did a lot of like self-study after that. Tons of different programmings, almost like tons of the ones that are out there. So really just for my own knowledge to perform better, feel better. But I got super deep into it about 6.5 years ago when I went to open a clinic in this space. So I'd been doing a lot of this stuff from Hyperbaric and traveling around to different doctors, different facilities, trying different things because I love progress. Like I love seeing progress. So as soon as I started realizing like, oh, wow, I feel way better just from changing my diet and restructuring my exercise and focusing on sleep. I had an Oura Ring. I think they came here about 7 years ago in the US. And I've had one for like 6.5 or 7 years. So yeah. I've always been interested in how can we become better. I also think we have one life. I want to get every single thing out of it. And I think to do that, I need to be in really good health.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like from your perspective, it was at least initially more about performance optimization than longevity.
Totally, yeah. Health and performance.
I mean, they obviously go together.
Yeah, exactly. So it started there. And then when I went to go open this clinic, obviously you have to determine what offerings you're going to have, right? So started ordering thousands of different tests that I had never seen before. My Western medical doc had never recommended a toxin test or an advanced thyroid panel or an advanced cardio panel. Like this was just not offered. So I'm like, this is so intriguing, right? There's so many things we can look at that I'd never been told about before. Started to order the tests. At the same time, I was, hiring a medical team. So then had a doctor to review these labs. And then I was talking to a lot of other clinic owners, providers, clinicians in terms of services, right? Like, what can we offer that is going to help people the most, based on what they're seeing. And we decided on therapies like hyperbaric, EVU, or like a high dose ozone therapy, an ozone sauna, a red light bed, a lot of the stuff that you now see pretty mainstream, I feel, at least, or maybe in my circles is kind of mainstream. So a lot of these more advanced, different therapies, but it was really based on precision biomarkers, getting to the root of what was plaguing that individual or they were struggling with. And then, a portion of the clients or patients there also wanted to do longevity or extend their lifespan. So as I get these labs back, I was young, so it's not like anything wild was wrong, but I saw it.
So you were doing these tests on yourself first as you were thinking about bringing them into the clinic.
Totally, yeah. And, I had advice, of course, from like the doctor on the team things, but I was so excited by all the areas in which I could improve. I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. And if I just had a standard, kind of overview, it'd probably be fine. But I'm like, I can improve in so many different areas. So that's when I really got, I don't know why I want to say obsessed, but like super passionate about, okay, let's optimize these biomarkers. Let's incorporate interventions that might be able to help and see what happens. And it's been a fun experience. Some things work really well, some things don't. Try to be really transparent about that and review what works and what doesn't. But I don't know. I mean, it's to me, like, feeling good is so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think my definition of like fun and what I find enjoyable is very different than maybe like a standard person, because I think like going to bed early is fun and it's exciting and I wake up with so much energy. So yeah. And then I, operated that clinic and got to see a lot of firsthand exciting progress and stories, and have just implemented a ton of it into my own life.
Cool. I want to talk more about the clinic, but I'm interested to know whether, so you mentioned, monitoring the biomarkers and then feeling better.
Yeah.
Have there ever been any cases where a biomarker or a set of biomarkers or some sort of way you are measuring your health hasn't lined up with the way you feel?
Because I've tested so often that there can be a shift, but it doesn't necessarily lead to symptoms, because I've tried to, manage it or optimize it before then. Even when I was getting like some more suboptimal markers, I still felt pretty good, right? But I was also really young, so it's kind of hard to like parse out.
I guess what I was getting at, it's fine if the answer is no. I guess what I was getting at is, a lot of times we think we know what these biomarkers are telling us. It depends on the specific biomarker. Again, that word encapsulates a lot. It could be blood tests, it could be body composition, it could be imaging, right? They're all biomarkers, but we think we know what it's telling us. But a lot of times that's based on, historical evidence, but not necessarily rock solid. So I was just wondering if you'd ever come across a case where what you thought was the case with the optimal range for the biomarker wasn't actually lining up with your experience, the way you felt, or experienced your current health.
Yeah.
Also worth saying, the way you feel may not be a perfect reflection of your underlying health, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's not one example that I can think of off the top of my head. But if I find one, I'll definitely.
Or maybe another way to frame it is, as you've gone on this journey, are there any biomarkers that or diagnostics that you were particularly excited about early on that you're not anymore, or that you have adopted as you've gone on that you now feel like are really, really useful?
Yeah. When it comes to like lipid panels, obviously I think most people are looking at basic lipid panels like LDL, HDL, triglycerides. I think obviously there's a much more compelling story there with some of these like LP little a, ApoB, maybe even TMAO. That's like a newer one that we've added on. So I think that gives a better story. So definitely moving away from that.
TMAO is interesting. What do you use TMAO? Like, how do you use that in the clinical setting?
So my providers have just advised me that it's a new marker that is potentially linked to higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
Okay,
so,
cardiovascular disease literature.
Yeah. So it's definitely within that like kind of lipid panel area that we're looking at.
Do you know what this is funny because my lab back in my academic life, stumbled on TMA to TMAO, the enzyme that does that reaction in aging in C. elegans. So I know a little bit about this, but I'm going to give you a little trivia. Do you know what the disease is for people who have deficiencies in that enzyme?
I do not.
It's called fish odor syndrome.
Okay.
It's because I guess TMA smell is the molecule that causes fish smell. And so if you're deficient in that enzyme, you build up TMA. Sorry, totally off topic, but now you have a new piece of information that you can. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be being sure I don't get that, right?
Okay. So I want to hear more about your clinic. So how did you, I mean, that's a pretty bold undertaking to say, I'm going to open a clinic.
Yeah.
Was it with the goal of performance optimization? Was that the original idea, or like what were you thinking when you decided you wanted to do this? What were you hoping to accomplish?
Well, I was going to add one more test real quick.
Okay, sure.
I would say biological age tests. Like I used to be much excited about those. I've listened to, experts like yourself and also just seen enough variation. And plus, depending on which test you do, I've also had the same experience. Right. It's like quite different. So I've removed that from something that I really want to highly prioritize. So yeah, I would say that one. As it relates to the clinic. So, I mean, I had been super passionate about it, had a lot of these different kind of therapies or wanted to be using them often. I also had a partner that was also interested, a business partner that was interested. And, we just thought, well, best case, this will be a great business. Worst case, it'll be a place for like all the stuff to be and just use it as our own spot, right? So that was kind of how it came to be, but it ended up being the former. It did end up being like a great business that I felt really good about because I was making relationships with every person that was there. I was there all day, every day. And it was really exciting to see people, feel better, be able to achieve some of their goals. So yeah, that's how it started.
And so the people who came to your clinic, I mean, would you characterize it as like a functional medicine clinic, or?
I would say functional, obviously, a slant towards longevity as well, because a lot of the therapies and, protocols that were in place were some for people with chronic disease, right? And the functional medicine seemed to help them a lot. And then, the more longevity or integrative side to really help with people. I would say the population base was about 50-50. So about 50% of people coming with looking for the root cause and the other 50% wanting to perform better, maybe have more energy, sleep better, improve longevity.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned some of the more advanced therapies and I want to talk about those because I think you're going to have a different perspective than I do probably on these things. I'll ask a question. Of the people who came into the clinic, when you think about things like, red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, peptides, we can talk about peptides. What was sort of your philosophy there? Do you feel, are those the kinds of things that would be recommended to lots of people, or is it a very sort of individual, like how do you decide who's right for those kinds of things?
Yeah.
Or the doctors?
Yeah. Well, the provider would definitely decide that. I mean, we obviously, baseline, you have to get a little bit of testing to understand, are you even suitable for some of these different therapies? I would say the next step from there is which ones are probably going to give you the most benefit, right? So some things like red light therapy are really easy. People relax a ton in the bed.
Sure.
It's very like low risk. We obviously thought everything that was there was low risk with appropriate medical guidance. But then some of the more advanced things, like let's say ozone therapy or an ozone sauna, the providers would look at their lab. So they would typically be getting something like either a mold panel if it was indicative that they were struggling with something like that. Obviously, the intake in a functional medicine clinic is like hours. It's not like 5 minutes. It's not like 10
minutes. You get
a
lot of background.
The providers, it's like from birth to where you're at then, like were you born C-section or vaginally, literally goes way back. So the providers would intake all this information along with symptoms and then order the right tests that they felt were appropriate and then make some sort of prescription of therapies, whether that be like ozone or, something a little bit more advanced. Maybe you do a micronutrient panel and you want to optimize some of your nutrients or you're really low in some. We could mix you up like a custom IV therapy of some nature and then, put you on a plan and then we would retest.
For those specific micronutrients.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll just say in general, I've experienced some trainings in the functional medicine space. Oh my God. Like, come on. Again, you're putting trust in people who are trying to sell you something. And that's where my sort of like, is it backed by, and that might be, again, I'm not saying this about ozone or anything else.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general, like peptides are a good example. I've seen some of these peptide training things.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, that is just not even close.
Yeah.
So this is where I think in the absence of having actual data, right, that we can trust, you end up having to trust other sources. Sometimes those sources are great.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not. I do worry a little bit that some of the medical providers I've met, in my view, are not critical thinking enough about the information that they're being provided, and they just go with it.
Yeah.
As if it's true, right?
How would you, because I mean, I always, want to put out the best information, right? And primarily what I'm focused on at this point anyways, is just like what I'm doing day to day.
Yeah.
But how would you think about it? Let's say if intervention is not obviously like large scale trials, but the sentiment within X community, let's say a functional medicine community, doctors, is that this therapy is efficacious. How would you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you definitely have to weigh that on the positive side. Like if a lot of people have tried it and a lot of doctors have tried it and they generally feel like it's having benefits for their patients, that suggests it probably is, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, I think it depends. It's going to be a therapy by therapy specific sort of thing. Like I think something like hyperbaric oxygen or red light therapy, especially if there's a consensus around the protocol behind it.
Yeah.
Is different from something like peptides, which, again, that's a class of bioactive molecules that has millions of different peptides, right? It's almost silly, and I do it myself. I just did it to talk about peptides as one thing, right?
Yeah.
Where that doesn't exist. So then you can talk about the specific peptides and the specific protocols, but oftentimes in that space, it all just gets lumped under this category, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think your point is a good one, where if a therapy has been widely adopted by many clinics and they're all generally feeling positive about it, there's probably something there.
Yeah.
It still would be really nice to have good data that we can feel confident in.
I mean, totally. It's actually an area I'm no longer, I've exited, but it's definitely something that needs to happen is like even curriculum around, right? So like standardization of protocols, because the few, doctors that do go on to pursue like longevity, it's tough to find where to be educated about these.
I agree. Yeah.
And a lot of the major, there's a couple well-known institutions, I suppose, that we can say that you can go on to do a fellowship, et cetera. A lot of them do incorporate the therapies that, for example, we were offering there, because we just need more streamlining of what's going on. But also, I guess, and you can speak to this, if the data is not there on a lot of things, it's hard to make a streamlined curriculum.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And again, this is I feel like a little challenge in this space. My curriculum obviously would differ from your curriculum, would differ from somebody else's curriculum. What's the right balance? You don't know, right? I mean, again, I think the field will sort of figure it out, and there'll be some zigzags along the way. But it's I think one of the things that I thought of when you were sort of describing your clinic as well is there's what the patients are asking for, right?
Yeah.
And so if people have heard of a procedure or a test, they'll come in and ask for it. And I think doctors often feel like they need to offer it, even if they don't really believe it's useful, because that's what they think their clients want. I don't know if you ever experienced that in your clinic, but
yeah. I mean, I remember when MTHFR was like out through the roof.
Just testing.
Just not even full genetic testing. Just like they wanted this one test because they heard about it. I mean, you know what I mean? And so, there would definitely be different levels of demand, and I'm sure there's a variety of different thresholds that each provider, was open to exploring.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I want to talk about what you're most interested in now. One other thing, though, that I'd be interested in your thoughts on, because you ran this from the other side in the clinic. One of the concerns I have about the way some of these procedures are offered and the way that the clinics are operating is it's a moneymaker for the clinic to offer a particular procedure. And so then there's an incentive there, right? And again, most medical providers, most clinics have good intentions, but anytime there's a profit incentive to offer a procedure or a diagnostic. I worry a little bit that influences how the clinic feels about that and how much they utilize that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely valid. I think obviously when I was there, I mean, people getting better is the most important thing. And that's, as you know, that's the majority of why doctors become, is to make people better, right? Of course, there can get to a point, everybody can be susceptible to like greed or things of that nature. So I would like to think that most people are operating, in good faith on that, especially like individual units. I would think maybe as it gets more corporate and maybe larger, and then it's more so instead of the providers making the decisions, it's like a corporate executive board. I could see that. But yeah, I think you just need to really care about the individuals that are going there. I know that sounds cliche, but I'm sure every single clinic is a little bit different. But I would like to think, especially the small ones, are like doing their very best that they can.
Yeah.
With the best information that they have at that time.
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, me too. Yeah.
Okay. So what are you personally doing? And again, it's probably worth saying, maybe you say it in your words. Like, I think we both agree that the foundation is around lifestyle factors, but tell me how you feel about that. And then once we talk about that, I'd want to hear more about the stuff outside of lifestyle that you're.
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, I say it all the time. I mean, yes, I have an H-bot in my house behind.
I keep going like that when we're talking about hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Yeah, you've done this, obviously.
I haven't.
No.
I've never tried it. Yeah.
Well, would you at some point? Are you about to?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, it even just feels pretty good because you're getting a lot of oxygen right after. So, without a doubt, lifestyle is going to make the biggest impact on longevity, health span, all that stuff. So I prioritize every single facet of that. I go to bed every night at 8:30. I consistently get 8 hours of sleep, sometimes depending on, I'm really focused on the female side of like health span, and I guess we can say longevity. So it's been interesting to watch that there are some phases of my cycle where my body naturally needs a little bit more sleep.
Right.
So I found that really interesting, but have a really, strict wind down routine. The red lights go on. The room is super cool. No distractions in the room. We can, if you want like little details, we can go into that, but really prioritize sleep. I mean, exercise, my routines, I think of them as how can I hit every facet of longevity. So I have VO2 max training. It was really fun. Of course, this is not clinically validated, but it was fun to see that I took my Oura Ring cardiovascular age from about -6.5 years to -11.5 years in about 6 months. When I first started introducing.
And are they basing that on VO2 max? Or
it's not a VO2 max. It's essentially, we'll have to include it in the show notes how they measure it, but it's a specific wave based on like kind of pulse, blood pressure, and changes to that. So we'll have to, I'll send it to you and you can break it down in the show notes. But it was fun to be able to take it from, obviously that's a pretty substantial decrease, and whether or not it's completely accurate or not, it was still really fun to see. And I'm sure by incorporating those VO2 max sessions, it did something positive. So love doing VO2 max. Obviously incorporate zone 2 in there, one longer run per week. I focus a lot on like muscle mass and bone density. So a lot of like jumping, so jump rope, box jumps, strength training, like lifting as heavy as I possibly can. Really, I'm not scared of like adding on too much muscle. Pay attention to my body composition. I do my grip strength testing at home. I test my lungs. I did just get a new at-home VO2 monitor. I'm curious, how accurate it will be because
is it a VO2 Master? Is it not?
It's a VO2 Master. I know that one's like the gold standard. This is a new one. It's I'll send you the link to it. I think Calibri is the name of it. So it's a smaller device, but they're definitely trying to.
Do you do the full maximal exertion VO2 max, or is it sub-maximal?
It's max. It's supposed to be the maximal exertion. I haven't gotten too deep into the weeds on it, but I'm super excited to try it because that would be great to be able to do at home.
There's one that we've been piloting at Optispan that is a resting VO2 max assessment. And it actually seems pretty close in most people. There's been one exception, 19-year-old male. Other than that, the resting seems pretty close to the full Cosmed, full VO2 max. So anyways, I think there are multiple ways you can do it, but didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm interested in VO2 max. I think it's a really useful biomarker.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the just gold standard ones, right? Like gait speed and grip strength. I mean, I got my grip strength up to 99 pounds.
And I assume you're not training grip strength.
No.
This is through other
I
types
mean,
of
the
exercises.
would be completely
I know, but there are people who ask, right? So it's worth saying.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, obviously, if it's a proxy to overall strength, raise the hand is not going to be super helpful. But no, I got my grip strength up to like 99 pounds. And it's kind of funny because we'll have, when friends come over, I have them do all this stuff. And like sometimes guys will do it. It's like, and then I ask my husband, I'm like, should I tell them the truth or do I be nice?
Yeah.
No. So love that. And stretching, mobility, I try to hit every single area, right? So that.
Are you very regimented in your exercise routine? I mean, you know what you're going to do each day, how long?
Yeah. Yeah. I find for me, it's easiest that way. And the way I like time block now just makes the most sense. So exercise is a huge one. I also love to exercise with friends. I did this almost like every other day in LA. That was a good way to have community and like just social connections. I also do like I was doing a 4:30 p.m. dinner in LA. So it'd be like all organic, but I'd have a lot of girls come over at like 4:30. So I stop eating typically on a daily basis around 3:30. So early dinner and then, off to bed, but always prioritizing that. And nutrition. I mean, I have a pretty regimented nutritional program. But I think.
What is your nutrition? Just, you don't have to give all of the details, but I mean, what are your sort of guiding principles on nutrition?
Whole foods only, no processed foods, no ultra processed foods.
And is that it? Are you really on a pure whole foods diet primarily? Wow.
Yeah. I haven't eaten processed foods and like any type of processed foods outside of, maybe like organic bone broth has a little bit of processing, but zero ultra processed foods. So just single ingredients. I like to do a lot of diversity too. So I have like a service that will deliver biodynamic, organic, different local produce. So I'm always trying to cook different vegetables, but it's really simple. I mean, what I'm eating, it's like some form of protein. And I've dialed back how much protein I'm focused on. I used to be wanting to get about 1 gram per pound of body weight. I'm closer to 0.6 to 0.7 grams now. And I haven't seen any decline like in my muscle, which is really exciting. And yeah, lots of veggies, organic plants, fiber. I'm trying to get about 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. So it's pretty simple. And nothing too wild. Like I'm not vegan. I do have some red meat in small quantities. So I would say it's probably based on the Mediterranean diet, right?
Yeah.
Like olive oil on my salad with my eggs in the morning, incorporating fish a lot. Love that. I have to be a little bit careful with fish because I've seen at some points heavy metals increase slightly.
In yourself?
In myself, yeah, on my labs. So, I found a company that actually tests the level of heavy metals in the fish. So I use that one, but that could be overkill.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that. That's, I think, obviously a diet that I wouldn't say most people couldn't do because I think people could, although there is an economic component there.
Yeah.
But most people aren't going to completely avoid processed or ultra processed foods. I guess the question, but I'm trying to frame this the right way. How important do you think that is? I mean, obviously it's important to you. You're doing it, right? How big of a problem do you think it is to have processed foods or ultra processed foods in your diet?
Well, I think we see, based on the data, right, and like the health of our society right now, what all these ultra processed foods are leading to. I mean, they're highly palatable, nutrient poor. Every bite of food that I eat, I'm trying to ensure that it's providing me something beneficial, right? So I know that wild-caught salmon or even grass-fed beef or plants, like something I'm getting beneficial. So, I mean, I think it's obviously a huge problem. I think that diet is something that can not only improve your energy, right? And maybe even things like a lot of individuals struggle with brain fog. I mean, I think that could be potentially diet related. So yeah, I think it's a huge issue. But in general, I'm not sure why, and I know I'm going to sound really like out of touch in this, but I don't understand why we're not prioritizing health more as a society.
Well, I don't think that's at all. I don't think you sound out of touch asking that at all. I mean, I think it's obvious that we're not prioritizing health as a society, and we, it'd be in everybody's benefit to do that. I think the incentive structures that underlie that are complex, and there are lots of reasons why we're at the place that we're at as a society when it comes to health. But we absolutely need to do to change the dynamic and do better.
Well, I would also maybe parse out, of course, some people are just simply not capable. It is super expensive to eat healthy, right? And I completely understand that. But the people that are, it's like people might look at, my routine or how I'm living my life and say, oh, that's like so hard and not enjoyable. But I would also say that, having chronic diseases that are avoidable also is hard and not enjoyable.
Yeah, I logically, that's true. I think the way I think about this is maybe a little bit different, and I'm not as regimented as you are either. So I think there are certain personalities that can thrive with that sort of level of discipline, and others don't.
Yeah.
Independent of that, I think there are many people who are at a place in life where it feels like it is just insurmountable to go to where you're at, right? And so it's really hard to start the process. And we touched on this a little bit a couple of hours ago. You kind of need that feedback loop to get going.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And then I think the other part is like there are people who are working 3 jobs, like they're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So the way I present it is like where you've gotten to is where people should strive to eventually get to, but you don't have to get there all at once. And there are things that everybody can do. One thing that you can do that, move on to something else, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
So I just try to keep in mind that everybody's situation is different. And I think there are reasons why it's hard for people. But I also think societally, like outside of the individuals, culturally, we've been trained not to focus on health, right? And you alluded to the processed foods that are reinforcing unhealthy habits.
I mean, the same thing with alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And like staying up late. We've really celebrated these things as over the years. And this hasn't been like an overnight thing either, right? I mean, I started little steps many years ago, but I just changed the way I think about it. Right. I mean, to me, that's not a celebration because I know it could potentially be harming.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you said that the way you did, because I think you said change the way you think about it. I think there are real psychological pieces here too. The way that we formulate reward or habits and what we think we need to do. I think a lot of this, the behavior modification piece is about reframing who you are, right, in your own head.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who drinks. I'm somebody who goes to sleep at 8:30, whatever. There is this psychological piece that has to happen as well. It seems like you've got that dialed in, but not everybody has. So anyway, so thank you. So that's, I think, important for people to hear that that really is the foundation. And then outside of that, you've got a lot of things that you've tried. Some things you still try. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you find outside of the lifestyle piece to be most important or effective for you?
Yeah. Well, one last note on that is I would say, if I didn't mention this already, but I think 95 to 98% of health optimization, longevity optimization, we can say, is found within those basics, right? So a lot of these other therapies or protocols or devices that I'm doing, it's just really to see what's possible. How do I feel after? And, if I've already mastered, let's say, those basics, like what else can I do, just to see what's possible. Sure. So some of my favorite things are definitely sauna. I mean, it's more accessible than a hyperbaric chamber, for example. But I've been doing these total toxic burdens for over 5 years consistently. And I've seen shifts depending on even the environment I was in. So I went from Ohio to LA. I saw an increase in toxins. The home was about the same, but the environment, obviously, the city in which I was in was different.
And when you say the home was about the same, is that because you measured in the home, like air quality? Got it.
Yeah. Air quality and like the air filtration and the water filtration and shower water. So those things were pretty consistent.
Yeah.
There could have, of course, been slight fluctuation.
Yeah. And you showed me earlier, you monitor the air quality in your house.
Yeah.
Pretty much continuously, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, the air quality also in the monitor in there, we measure like noise exposure, UVB exposure in the house. We're new here, so we still have a few things to implement. But yeah, most things were even. So by moving to LA, I saw a bit of an increase in some of the toxin exposures. So I think sauna, I've seen from my experience that when I'm doing it consistently, I keep that total toxic burden pretty low. It's also, to me, relaxing. So I enjoy that.
There's a stress relief component.
Stress reduction. I mean, if you look at some of the research around sauna, going back to a lot of the Finnish studies, because in Finland, I believe it's like one sauna per every home. It's like really interesting culture over there. They do it as like a way to hang out. Reduction in risk of cardiovascular events and potential reduction in dementia. So if you think about the mechanism there and you're just improving blood flow significantly throughout the body, we know there's so many benefits to that. So you can do it through exercise, which is like a free practice.
Yeah.
Or, you jump in the sauna and you're sweating. And I mean, I think that I would love to hear your take, but we do seem to be living in a more polluted environment now than in prior.
Yeah.
So I think it might require something additional than just what we've done.
I think you're right. I think I want to come back to the test that you did, because I'm interested to know how you're measuring the toxin burden. I think you're right about the environment. Certainly it's different than it was 50 years ago. I think we're exposed to different contaminants. I mean, there was a lot of pollution at certain places in the United States 50 years ago too. So I think obviously, people think a lot about things like microplastics now. That's like a really good example in my mind of the lack of knowledge around how bad the environment really is. A lot of people are really, really scared of microplastics now. And there are a lot of people capitalizing on that fear when in reality, we don't actually know. We know they're there. We don't actually know how bad it's going to be. It could be sort of a minor thing where only a small percentage of people are really adversely affected, or it could be something where, it's going to have major implications on health for a large section of the population. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the approach you're taking is rational, that you should try to minimize those exposures as much as you can, given the toxins that might be out there, right? And there may be things we don't know about yet, right?
Yeah.
So you do the best you can. And, some people can get access to this sort of broad testing. That's why I want to learn more about how you do this. That's not going to be possible for everyone. And again, there's an economic component, but everybody can take steps to avoid air pollution when it's really polluted out.
Yeah.
Given that you maybe can't move out of the city you're in, or avoid as microplastics as much as you possibly can. So that's kind of the way I frame the environmental toxin situation, is that we should take the steps that we can while being pragmatic.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think too, like if possible, like optimizing your home environment, because we spend so much time there. So maybe, like an air filter. It also deemed to be that the air inside of the home is actually, more, let's say, polluted or toxic than the outside air, because we're not opening up to get fresh air in. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm definitely looking at, and I've seen massive shifts. So then when I was in LA, I did a total toxic burden, like smack dab in the middle of the LA fires. So I had before and then I had after, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen. And I don't want to like scare anyone or fearmonger, like your body will detoxify this stuff, right? Some faster than others. But it was absolutely wild. And definitely sauna for me was a big part of being able to detox. I also did a plasmapheresis. So I did a test January 11th, I think, and then did a TPE session. And then I did one a week and a half or 2 weeks after. So for me,
and this is the total tox test.
Yeah. So it's looking at molds and mycotoxins, environmental toxins, things like BPA, parabens, phthalates, and then also heavy metals.
And do you have a specific test that you favor?
It's through the one I do is through Vibrant Labs or Vibrant Wellness, and it's called the Total Tox Burden. So it's essentially taking those 3 separate tests and combining them into one. So.
Got it. And so what was the effect of therapeutic plasma exchange?
It was about an 11% reduction in toxins across the board.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on that? Is that substantial enough?
I don't know. I mean, again, well, at least it's going the right direction is my gut reaction. So was your toxin burden high based on the standard distribution for the population? I guess would be the question. My intuition is therapeutic plasma exchange, at least for toxins that are in circulation, will lower those toxins in people who are starting from a high baseline. If you're starting low, the effect is probably going to be pretty small. And that was my experience with microplastics when I did TPE.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So at that time, it was fire time. So totally, it was like the highest level of toxins ever seen. So it was an interesting.
I mean, did they give you like a population
No, they
distribution?
Yeah.
Okay, that's too bad. Yeah.
not necessarily. I could circle back and ask, but yeah, so it was about an 11% reduction. Obviously, some toxins were higher percentage, but on average, it was about
How far after the TPE did you measure?
to a week and a half or 2 weeks.
So I don't know. I'm going by what I've been told. So I haven't done the experiment, but I have been told that, at least for microplastics, where people who have high burden of microplastics, do a session of therapeutic plasma exchange often will come down. But if you wait a week, it'll come back up. And the hypothesis is that's because there's microplastics in our tissues.
Yeah.
And so that gives time for those to be, hopefully brought out of the tissues back into circulation. So if you do another round of TPE, you can bring it down and then it'll stay down. Again, that's what I've been told. I don't have the data to back it up, but it's intuitively, it makes sense. So that might have been the situation with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very curious actually about the frequency and need for TPE. I'm going to interview, do you know Dr. David Furman?
Yeah, I know him pretty well. Yeah,
So
he's great.
He's doing
Super scientist, yeah.
Yeah, he's doing a lot on TPE actually. And so I'm just eager to learn more. Like I said, I'm always trying to context this like, hey, I did this therapy. That was my result before. This was after. Do you need it? I'm not sure. Another interesting finding, though, that I did have after TPE was that I had seen a little bit of an increase in my TPO antibodies. So they were at about 9, which is obviously well under the, diagnosable limit. But after that, there were 0. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Did your TPE have intravenous immunoglobulin, IVIG? Do you know?
I don't.
Some do, some don't. That's sort of thought to be like because you're going to deplete out a lot of your immunoglobulins. That was thought to be like an immune booster.
Got it. I mean, I know I was given albumin.
Yeah, no, that's always going to be in the saline. Yeah.
So I'm actually interested thinking forward about apheresis.
I don't think so.
So it's essentially just filtering the plasma. It's approved in Europe.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I might be excited about that in the future only because, getting back the albumin, it's kind of like question mark as to what's the quality of that.
Right. Again, yeah. I mean, they're always trying to do this risk-reward calculation.
Yeah.
What is there a reward to diluting the plasma out, but then is there a risk to the albumin? And I mean, again, we're getting in the weeds a little bit. Albumin's interesting. There's a little bit of literature in mice that just supplementing albumin can have positive effects on health span and maybe lifespan. So, I mean, it's complicated, but I get the rationale for that.
Yeah, so maybe, but it's also incredibly expensive right now.
And I think you're going to be filtering for specific things. And so if there are unknown toxins or, just like general inflammatory state, I mean, like I'm guessing you have very low inflammatory state. But for a lot of people, if you have a high level of chronic inflammation, just the therapeutic plasma exchange itself could dilute out some of that chronic inflammation. You're probably not going to get that from a straight filtration if you're filtering for, plastics, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense. Curious your thoughts on this because I'm always wanting to offer more accessible options too. Some people are doing plasma donations over time. Obviously, it's not going to be the same effect, right? But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, again, intuitively to me, it makes sense if you do it enough.
Yeah.
I've asked, and the people who are proponents of therapeutic plasma exchange say, oh no, it's nowhere near the right amount, right? Yeah. And so I don't remember the volumes, but it is the case that donation is like 10-fold less the volume exchange that you get from one round of therapeutic plasma exchange. So. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, but plasma donation is a good thing to do. So, if you want to do it, do it.
Could be. Maybe in the future more information will come out because then you actually get paid to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
So then that's far better.
And you're helping other people. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, so we got on therapeutic plasma exchange, but you started with sauna, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
I think, sauna is pretty easy, fairly accessible. They have them in a lot of gyms. I think it's beneficial. For me, at least from what I've seen from reducing the toxic burden and some of the other, finished studies that seem to support it could be a positive.
And probably no real downside, although don't fall asleep. So do you sauna alone or do you have somebody with you or somebody who at least knows where you're at?
My husband usually knows, where I'm at. And it's a lot of times we'll use it as time to catch up too, so hang out in there.
Yeah. I've heard, I mean, again, I don't have a sauna, so I enjoy doing sauna, but I don't do it regularly.
Yeah.
But in talking to people, I've heard several people say that if you if you routinely do it with a partner, it's that good sort of connection component as well.
Yeah,
So,
which is a nice.
I do know one person who fell asleep in the sauna and actually had sort of a tragic outcome. He's alive, but pretty severe. So don't fall asleep in the sauna.
No, definitely don't.
Yeah.
To me, it's too hot to fall asleep. Like, you want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But,
well, I don't know. Actually, I shouldn't say he fell asleep. He became unconscious. He might have passed out because of low blood pressure, something like that. Well,
definitely important to like hydrate and have minerals and electrolytes and all that stuff because you're sweating some of that out. So, yeah.
Risk is still non-zero. It's low with sauna, but non-zero.
Yeah.
Okay, so you like sauna. What else?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I enjoy hyperbaric. I think that, I first learned about hyperbaric oxygen, actually. I did a bunch of coursework through Dr. Daniel Amen. So he's a psychiatrist, but he started doing the SPECT imaging, which was looking at activity and blood flow. And a lot of individuals who had had a concussion, you put them through about 40 sessions of HBOT, and then they would rescan and also, report symptoms, and they seem to be doing a lot better. So potentially good for the brain. So I think it can be potentially beneficial for that. So brain health, I mean, self-reported benefits when I do HBOT sessions, I feel like clearer, more like mental clarity, more mental energy. One really cool thing is that, again, this is just an aura ring, but as soon as I get into the chamber, it drops me into parasympathetic state. Like I'm in restored immediately, even for the exhaustion.
Yeah.
So I really like that benefit because I am, as I mentioned to you on my podcast, I'm trying to do things to ensure that my stress based on aura is within a little bit more of an optimal range,
And why Aura Ring?
It was just the first wearable, honestly, that I was made aware of. So I got one like 7 years ago, and I've just kind of stuck with it. I've tried Whoop because honestly, I wanted to see how hard it was to get 100 sleep score. And it wasn't. So I do it every night. So I only wore it for like 3 weeks.
Okay.
So
where does Aura put you?
In the 90s, but I don't think you can actually get 100.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's impossible. They always want you to be striving.
Right.
Right.
That's interesting. Maybe they've rigged the algorithm for a psychological advantage there.
Possibly, yeah. Because I've gotten think like 98. Still always in the 90s, but I've never gone 100.
Yeah. So that actually, I was going to ask you if you've seen any biomarker changes. So you have the subjective feeling of, clearer thought, maybe more energy. But it's interesting that you see that change in the Aura Ring. I'm going to see if I can find other people who've had that experience. That's actually an easy experiment to do, right?
Yeah, just wear it inside the chamber.
Yeah.
But it's repeated every single time it's done that. So I would think that's, at least for me.
Yeah, no, it seems real.
Benefit, right? So if I'm, trying to reduce stress levels in general, then that's a helpful therapy. I mean, there's some interesting like potential benefits to everything from skin health to, I know that it's being studied for things like increasing AMH, which is a measurement of ovarian reserve, which is obviously, as someone very interested in female longevity, is exciting. So that's really great. I mean, there have been some studies out of Israel that are potentially showing a lengthening of telomeres, which is, potentially.
Yeah, I know those studies, and everybody I talk to about those studies is like, that's within the scientific community in the aging field. Those are not respected studies. I'm not saying that it doesn't have the effect or that it's not doing other things, and also telomeres, there's a lot of, whatever. It's going the right direction. At least it's not making your telomeres shorter.
Yeah.
Although if you had cancer, that might be a good thing. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I enjoy that protocol. I have a hyperbaric physician that like advises me on kind of what to do and how to do it and when. So doing like it's kind of like a loading dose. So you'll do 40 sessions at X atmospheres pressure. So this chamber goes to 2.0 ATA. So I'll do 40 sessions at the intervals of 5 sessions per week. It does produce a little bit of oxidative stress. So sure, you don't want me to be doing it 7 days a week. And then for about an hour to an hour and 20 or so each session. So I'm doing that. I also enjoy, I enjoy red light therapy. That one is relatively accessible. I mean, I feel like my mitochondrial markers are pretty good.
Like, what do you mean by mitochondrial markers?
On the total toxic burden test, they actually do a measurement of a mitochondrial marker. It's from a few different markers that they measure. And, it's changed before. So during the fires, it was not good. Like when I had all those toxins, which makes sense, right?
Yeah. I've been checking this. I'm interested to know how they're assessing mitochondrial, whatever their function, activity, quality, whatever.
But if I stay with the same test, at least I see variations in my own. So that seems to potentially.
How do you do the red light therapy?
Just with a little panel. So I actually have 4 panels in that room that we need to do a full body. But yeah, I'll just do the panel. I do it probably 4 days per week, not every day per week. And then I'll do 10 minutes each side. And then once I have 2 panels.
Do you think the full body is necessary? I mean, I've seen studies where they do just like on the back, right? And it has effects on like glucose clearance.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's easy enough for me to do. Because there's also been some interesting studies from what I've seen actually on fertility and red light therapy, just using the proximal technique and actually able to positively impact potentially ovarian function in a small study, just using it here on the neck. So obviously, probably not necessary everywhere. I think you can use it for different reasons too, right? Or like if you are really focusing on skin, obviously you'd probably want to put it on your face. If you have a little injury maybe that you're using it for, might put it there locally.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting because I wonder with things like that, you know, is it going to be useful for all of those different things? Or is a lot of it just like, you know, sure, it's going to cure your injury. So shine some red light on. I mean, you know, that's the other side of it, right? I mean, you say it that way, it sounds silly, right? Like, yeah, just shine red light on your broken leg and you're going to be fine.
I mean, I wonder if, you know, because we can obviously get red light from the sun too, right? Like, so I wonder if some of what we're doing here is just bringing like more ancestral or natural practices into the home.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, yes, red light could certainly have biological activity. And I think there are cases where that's clear, right? I just wonder sometimes these things like hyperbaric oxygen now can be talked about for 25 different things. It might work for some of them, but a lot of times I think these things just get sort of adopted or propagated. They work for one thing and then all of a sudden people want to use it for everything under the sun, which is, you know, that's just human nature.
I mean, I think with all of these things, it's so new that we definitely need more research. And it would be really amazing for even just clinics to be cross-sharing information.
Yes.
And seeing what the results happen to be.
Right.
That would be really powerful.
I wanted to ask about the specific protocol here, because that gets to this cross-sharing of information. And I feel like sometimes these protocols get established, you know, based on one person does it this way, without a lot of evidence that it is the right way, a good way. Do you know in this case, like what the rationale is behind that protocol?
I believe that there was a protocol that was put out in a study that was actually 60 sessions. But my doctor kind of made it shorter for me because of my age and, you know, even our size. So he kind of took what he knew was out there and then made it a little bit more applicable to me.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of the difference between science and medicine. I mean, obviously they're overlapping and science needs to be a part of medicine, but I think medical doctors sometimes, often, are very willing to sort of intuit a change to something that was demonstrated to work in one context based on a specific use case. And that's not a judgment. I think it's just that's an example of this. And that may or may not actually be the right intuition, but they're willing to do that, right?
But the other question is how do we find out if it is, if we don't?
You got to study it. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we would just be at a complete halt and we would just be only have actually, you know, all the basics.
Like I said, it wasn't a judgment. It's an observation.
No, I like love having this type of dialogue because I find myself in this interesting like kind of position, right? Where I want to do all these things and I don't want to wait until like there's a study for every single thing. That certainly doesn't mean that anyone listening should but I love that we have the freedom to do things if we want to, right? Like we can try things out on ourselves. And even, you know, I speak all over. There's a lot of other countries where a lot of things you just simply can't access. Is that for better or for worse? I don't know, but I would like to be able to access things.
And there are a lot of countries where you can access a lot more than what we can, at least legally in the United States.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
So it's an interesting.
Hence why everyone goes out of this country for stem cells and a lot of other.
Oh boy, let's not go down the stem cell. That would get complicated really fast. I do want to talk about women's health because I know that's a huge interest of yours, and kind of what are some of the take-homes that you've learned as you've been exploring the research and in your own experience that are most important in that domain?
Yeah. Well, I would first like to say, I think we have a lot of catching up to do in the research. You know, there's not a ton that is known about these sex differences as it relates to health optimization or longevity. There are some.
Right.
But I have a podcast and I interview experts all the time, just trying to get to the truth of the matter, because I really just want to do, selfishly, I want to do what works best. So I want to figure out what that is. And then I can tell people, if they're listening. But personally, I have found nuance in most categories. So sleep, for example, my husband seems to have a very consistent sleep-wake schedule that does not change. He also seems to need, and this could be just bio-individual, but less sleep than me. I think the research says that women may need between 11 and 20 minutes more of sleep. But I found, it can be even more than that in different phases. We talked about caloric restriction being one of the most science-backed longevity protocols, right? Well,
in laboratory animals.
But we have to use in humans.
Yeah. I agree.
A lot of the longevity protocols, they incorporate
absolute
version of caloric restriction. And so I tried that, early on, like 6+ years ago.
How much did you restrict, just out of curiosity?
About 20 to 25%.
Okay.
So it was pretty significant.
And I assume you were already towards the low end of normal or normal range.
Yeah, it wasn't anything crazy in terms of caloric intake when I started.
Right.
But I was like, let's see how this goes. And it didn't take too long to see thyroid markers trend in the wrong direction. Hormones start to become a little bit dysregulated.
Yeah.
So that's just one area, because again, we don't have a ton of things in the science that really say like this will help, but that is one thing that a lot of people kind of lean on. So for me as a woman, especially in reproductive years, that could change in postmenopause years, but it didn't seem like a good fit for me.
Right.
So that was another thing. In general, also women are so much more susceptible to, we can wrap it up soon too if you want, to autoimmune conditions. I think about 80% of autoimmune conditions roughly are in women. So that changes how I'm looking at different biomarkers, what biomarkers I'm looking for, what range I want to keep those in, because I, obviously want to ensure that doesn't happen to the best of my ability. So kind of looking at some different things maybe that men might be looking at. As it relates to exercise, even like I love HIIT training, of course, for potential mitochondrial benefits, things of that nature, cardiovascular benefits. But I've also found that there can be a time and a place. Like there can be too much of this longevity practices that I was stacking that again weren't necessarily yielding the best results. And for potentially, a man might work better. Like my husband can do really intense exercise every day, sleep less. He can do cold therapy and sauna, all these hormetic stressors, and not really see any dysregulation in his testosterone, for example.
Right.
So that was just something that I was like, okay, I need to pay attention to this and potentially change my routine based on what I'm seeing. Biggest area of interest for me, and again, not much data on why do the ovaries age at double the speed of every other organ, but what can potentially be done. I'm experimenting with rapamycin, potentially seeing, it's just going to be so hard to track, right? Because we don't have any validation on how old the ovaries are right now, how old they are after intervention.
Yeah. This is an interesting area where it should certainly be the case that there are circulating biomarkers that are predictive of, we know there are some biomarkers predictive of ovarian function, but we don't have a core set, as I think you were alluding to, that we can say, this is really tracking ovarian aging or ovarian function quantitatively, at least easily. And that's a place where we touched on this again a couple of hours ago. Tune into the episode on Kayla's channel if you want to get the full conversation, where we were talking about these epigenetic tests from a single sample that can assess function in a variety of organs and tissues in the body.
Yeah.
That may be a place where we'll have some tools pretty quickly that can supplement the existing hormonal assessments and other measures we have of ovarian function, to really look at how the ovaries are changing throughout the life course.
Yeah. I've done all the testing that I think is available. Obviously, like hormone testing, AMH testing, intravaginal ultrasound to do a follicle count. But it doesn't necessarily, give a great prediction of how old the
right. And I think this goes to your point that this just really hasn't been studied in depth. It's starting to be now, but we don't have a lot of the foundational information that we really need.
Yeah.
So what are you most excited about? It could be in the space of ovarian aging or sort of more broadly speaking, or what are some things that you find particularly exciting or intriguing?
Yeah. I mean, definitely anything as it relates to ovarian function, even, truly identifying what is the main driver. I'm sure it's multiple things like potentially inflammation, right? We know that we're having an entire inflammatory cascade every month as we are cycling. That I'm just excited to learn more information about how can we put, because if we can extend the age to menopause and extend our fertile years, I mean, we know that so many all causes increase when we hit menopause. And you can do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, but ideally, how can we just push that out and have, more healthy years without even having to do hormone therapy?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of interested from like a, far out standpoint, mitochondrial transfers.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah, I think that could be really helpful, right? Because we know that many individuals have mitochondrial dysfunction. So, yeah, that's probably one of the areas that I'm excited for.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for hosting me here. This has been a lot of fun for the last, I don't know, we've gone 3.5 hours, 4 hours now.
Yeah, wow.
So I think this will be a great episode for both of our viewers, and just really appreciate you taking the time and energy.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.